bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Better run, 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 run away. Oh.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Terror Obscura, the show where we look at the best and worst horror has to offer. I'm your host, The Fear Fan, and thanks for tuning in. Say, since we took a look at the way a franchise is supposed to end last time, and since we'll be seeing how they brought it back next time, I thought it might be interesting to take a look at a franchise that never dies. I'm speaking, of course, about Godzilla. Beginning in 1954 and continuing, well, up through this year, Godzilla has been a near constant fixture of fantastic cinema. With 30 films over the course of 60 years, there has never been more than a decade in which Tokyo hasn't been on the receiving end of a giant green ass beating. Hell, even when Godzilla Final Wars came out, Toho realized that they weren't fooling anyone, and rather than trying to feed us a line of BS about this being the last movie of its kind ever, like some franchises would, they came out and said that they'd be taking a 10-year break. Honestly, the only other franchise that even comes close to this kind of success is the James Bond series, and that only has 23 films to its name. Well, unless you count certain other cinematic nightmares, but that way lies damnation and madness. And while Godzilla may be one of the silver screen's biggest stars, both figuratively and literally, that doesn't mean that there weren't points in history when his future was in doubt. And there was probably no greater time of uncertainty than around 1971. After the huge, all-out monster bash of Destroy All Monsters, which featured pretty much every Toho beastie worth mentioning, and even one worth loathing, the studio seemed at a loss for what to do with their biggest star. Anyone looking for proof need look no further than 1969's Godzilla's Revenge, where a young orphan boy learned to deal with the dangers of kidnappers, bullies, stock footage, and what happens when a bored studio tries to mold a Godzilla statue out of human feces and shame. And although the only revenge Godzilla got in that movie was on the audience, somehow Big G still managed to survive that A-bomb of shit, staggering into his next feature, Godzilla vs. Hedorah. Godzilla's secret shame there had managed to give the franchise a black eye. Not only did it piss people off with its craptacular use of stock footage, and by being not just a kids movie but a bad one at that, but it also committed the cardinal sin of being Manila-based, and as such was pure box office poison. Revenge was the first film in the series to sell less than 2 million tickets, and, fearing another loss, the studio slashed the budget and cut the shooting schedule to an insane 35 days before handing it to first-time director Yoshimitsu Banno. Not only that, but they were denied even a second unit, meaning that Banno himself would be shooting everything, even with his diminished schedule. And while all of that would normally be a warning sign that this thing was a pile of nuclear waste on par with Godzilla taking a dump, we all know that the Godzilla franchise went on long after this. So, that begs the question, was this movie a step back from the brink, or would it be just another headlong slide into a shit pile worthy of the Smog monster himself? There's only one way to know for sure, so let's tune in and find out. We begin with what are doubtlessly outtakes from the Japanese Board of Tourism's spectacularly unsuccessful Come See the Filth of Osaka campaign. Of course, it doesn't take too long for us to get the point, and, as a punctuation mark, we are rewarded with our first glimpse of the titular turd beast, Hedorah, who is apparently a floater. Not only that, but the film is so overjoyed to see him that it can't help but break out into song to celebrate.
鳥も魚も
And while I haven't had a chance to practice my translation skills since the Ballad of King Caesar and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, I think I've got this one figured out.
魚もどこへ行ったのトンボも蝶もどこへ行ったの水銀コバルトカドミウム鉛硫酸極シダン
Of course, you could always listen to the English language version of the song.
Animals, God's animals, don't go away, don't go.
But let's face it, mine's better. So, after establishing that pollution is bad, and that clocks in Japan can take a licking but keep on ticking, we move to some considerably nicer environs, where one of the cast is trying to scientifically determine which is better, the Toho Godzilla or the Legendary Pictures Godzilla.
Godzilla, your favorite? Superman is too.
Well, that's a weird pairing. One of them engages in thoughtless battles that level cities and kill thousands before dispatching his opponent in suitably gruesome fashion, and the other one is Godzilla. Meet Ken, annoying child extraordinaire, and our marginal main character. He apparently lives in a considerably less shitty part of town with his mother, who is basically not a character, and his dad, a professor with a PhD in indeterminate enviroscience, who seems to spend more time with his fish than his son, for reasons that will become increasingly apparent as the movie wears on. Also in evidence is Yukio, who, well, I've got nothing. Seriously, I have deliberately watched and rewatched this movie over and over again looking for any hint, any clue, every scene with the guy, and I have no idea who he is, what he does, or why he spends so much time with their kid. As far as I can tell, they literally haven't seen this guy up until he wanders into their garden and decides that he will never leave. Of course, it may just be that Ken's family is in the habit of collecting strays, since we soon learn that the professor is apparently paying Toei, a local homeless man, to bring him samples of the local fish for his non-specific environmental studies.
Well now, doctor, what kind of fish is it?
Damn, the pollution must be getting bad. It turned that poor tadpole into a shitty plastic prop. Of course, it may be the lucky one, given that every other fish in the professor's growing sushi collection is covered in considerably less pleasant-looking tumors. Still, Toei shouldn't be too sad, as it appears that there are at least one or two whoppers waiting to be caught, as we see when we cut to the Yano family having dinner with their newly acquired stalker/son/cult follower/whatever. Also, it seems kind of weird that we cut away from images of tumorous tuna to pictures of the Yanos chowing down.
Was it some kind of monster? Or was it some new kind of military weapon?
Guess they had to clear out some of those jars for the professor's new acquisition. Although I suppose this explains why Toei didn't stick around for dinner. Anyway, Ken recognizes the critter in the bay as being a supersized version of the plastic tadpole the hobo dropped off earlier, and it isn't very long before the professor heads down to the bay to check it out, presumably after ordering the biggest damn jar he can find to store it in. Anyway, while Dr. Strangelove there discovers where the Yakuza dumped the Aflac duck when he couldn't pay his gambling debts, we learn that Ken takes after his father by killing random sea life for samples. He's no doubt disappointed to discover that something else is done in most of the local critters before he got there, but he doesn't have to worry about being lonely for too long, as he quickly finds himself having a close encounter of the turd kind. Congratulations, kid! You've just managed to show more agency in 10 seconds than the entire cast of Godzilla 2014 did in 2.5 hours. The professor, however, is a bit less fortunate and finds himself trapped in the water with the monster, no doubt thanking God that this thing doesn't have tentacles as it rushes towards him. What happened next was unspeakable. Still, even if the professor is dead, or worse, at least Ken can carry on the movie. So far, he's been a lot less annoying than the rest of the child actors in the series, and hey, who knows, he might wind up pretty tolerable.
Papa? 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 Papa?
Never mind.
Papa!
Thankfully for us, although maybe less luckily for him, Professor Yano survives, leaving him free to pursue his lifelong dream of becoming Gotham's district attorney. Once he's done holding a press conference to assure everyone that the monster, now named Hedorah because of reasons, did not violate him in any way, shape, or form, we learn that the beast has decided it likes the taste of oil tankers better than middle-aged Japanese men. We learn this not only by having a newscaster tell us what's going on while we see a series of stills, but also through a weird bit of animation telling us that Hedorah is cheerful. And here we have one of the most contentious parts of the series, with many people wondering why they'd include something so bizarre in a series about a giant radioactive dinosaur kicking other monsters' asses. I have my own theories, but for now, I'll just say that this isn't nearly the worst thing to happen to Godzilla in the world of animation.
Godzilla, 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 and Godzilla.
Oh, Godzilla, why must all of your children be such utter disappointments? Well, except for you, baby Godzilla / Godzilla Jr. You were actually pretty awesome. Represent. Of course, when shitty animation rears its ugly head, there's only one solution: Godzilla. Awakened this time by the mysterious force of some jackass projecting a rising sun into his face, nice one, Dick, we soon learn what's helped to keep him a fan favorite for so many years: the fact that he apparently answers fan mail.
Human waste, poison gas, everything ugly is put into the sea. And all life dies. Godzilla would really get angry if he saw this. He would do something. Class A, second grade, Kenyano.
Wait a second. So, you are telling me that all I have to do to have a career spanning dozens of movies over the course of 60 years is to administer the occasional on-demand ass beating? Where do I sign up? Alright, time for some fan mail.
Dear Fear Fan, I was just writing to tell you I really like your show. In fact, along with the Cinema Snob and the Horror Guru, you're probably one of my favorite top 3. That said, some of the recent Horror Guru stuff hasn't been as good as Silverwork, but that's maybe just my taste.
Fuck you!
So while Godzilla plays Captain Planet, Professor Yano gets up for a midnight snack, only to discover that his meal of choice is gone a little dry. Of course, once he tries to rehydrate it, he makes a shocking discovery. Not only is the Hedorah composed of minerals wrapped in sludge, but it's capable of splitting into smaller forms and recombining, potentially increasing to massive size. And what does Ken have to say to this miracle of science and nature?
Papa?
I hate you too. So, apparently having heard its name mentioned, Hedorah decides to hit the town. Specifically, the most 70s-tacular nightclub I've ever seen committed to film. There, Yukio's trying to drink off a hard day of experiencing Stockholm Syndrome for his new family, while enjoying a performance from the club's seashell-crotched singer. Although, given what I've heard about hippies, maybe crabs would have been a better choice. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I should at least hear what she's going to sing before I put her down.
鳥も魚も
Great. Well, as bad as it is, I guess it could be worse. And while these people are clearly all about the environment, there are a few others on the docks who have their fair share of doubts.
What did you say? Oh, knock it off. Hedorahs aren't real and you know it.
Dude, have you never seen the classic Al Gore documentary, An Inconvenient Shit Beast? For shame, sir. For shame. Seriously, the damn thing's right outside your window, using your smokestack as the world's biggest bong. Of course, it seems that Godzilla's just as anti-drug as he is pro-environment, because it's not long before he shows up to harsh the H-Man's buzz. The two opponents size each other up for a moment before Hedorah strikes with the most devastating attack in his arsenal, ramming his crotch directly into Godzilla's open mouth. Ugh, should I be watching this? And what really sells the attack is the look of absolute dumbfounded surprise in Godzilla's face in the moment before he gets an eyeful of oncoming monster groin. So, not being one to take that kind of harassment lying down, at least not for very long, Godzilla busts out some moves of his own, taking the glutinous hellbeast down before it can hurt anyone else. Let's just blame that one on Hedorah. And speaking of people being surrounded by shit, Yukio is still hanging out at the party when the movie that's already contained unprovoked crotch-to-the-face attacks, bizarre animation, and possible cult activity gets weird. Shit! I guess the drugs the Yanos were using to brainwash him into their cult are finally starting to kick in. Either that, or there was a shit ton of LSD in that fish he ate earlier. Either way, his Piscean freakout is interrupted by a visit from the Blob, and he and the club singer decide it's time to start doing their part for the environment by carpooling as they get the fuck out of there. Although, that may not be the best thing for their health, as they stumble into our current monster mash, where Hedorah better watch his ass, as it appears Godzilla may have been studying under Pai Mei. Well, either that, or there's a conversation going on in Monster Ease here that I'm not entirely getting. So, once Hedorah's resorted to pooping at Godzilla, because seriously, what the hell else would you call that? Godzilla retaliates by literally knocking the shit out of him. A couple of blasts of atomic breath later, and I can only imagine the smell baked Smog monster produces, Hedorah decides to bugger off, and retreats to the ocean as we're treated to another animated segment showing us A, how Hedorah grows from eating pollution, and B, that it's incredibly likely he had a Taco Bell burrito for lunch. The next day, the Yano clan and their brainwashed mind slave head to the site of the battle, and if there were any questions about whether they're a cult or not, they're pretty much answered when we see that Miss Hippie Chick from last night is with them, now sporting a matching haircut and a set of conservative clothes, proving that while some people might drink the Kool-Aid, others clearly gravitate towards eating the mercury-laced fugu.
We'll make her one of us. We accept her one of us. We accept her one of us. Gooba gobble, gooba gobble.
Kid, if you knew what that meant, you probably wouldn't be doing it. So, once he's done ordering his thralls to scoop up some of the now radioactive Hedorah poop with their bare hands, because his doctorate is clearly not in sanitation, he examines the bits and determines that Hedorah is actually producing a sulfuric acid fog as a waste product. If it keeps growing, it seems pretty likely that the mist will wind up covering the entire planet. It's disturbing and sobering news, and when you know the whole world could end at any day, there's really only one way to handle it. Yay! The death of the human race! Let's go to Six Flags! Of course, it looks like Ken has gotten a hold of some of that fish that Daddy uses for his special Forever guests, because he starts hallucinating a badly drawn Godzilla-shaped blob during his coaster ride. Caught in the throes of a hallucinogen-induced freakout, he sprints off as soon as the coaster stops, proving conclusively that brainwashed hippie slaves do not make good babysitters.
Ken, come here!
Now don't worry, he'll be alright.
Making matters worse is that Hedorah is on the attack, even doing a flyby of what I can only assume is the Yanos' cult compound, where we learn that those bean burritos are still in full effect. Hell, even Godzilla seems affected, as he is reduced to randomly flailing his arms about in a desperate attempt to clear the air, although that doesn't stop him from avenging his brutal teabagging from earlier with a bit of fisting. Okay, I can't be the only one who thinks this is weird. Hey, Smarty!
Hey, Fear Fan, what's up, man?
Check this out.
Should we be watching this?
Needless to say, Godzilla reacts the same way anyone who's gotten a fistful of crap would, and we see that not only does Hedorah shit out sulfuric acid, it also apparently craps out the alien monkey transformation effects from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and fake skeletons to boot. Once Ken covers his eyes and flees from the unsightly special effects, we learn that not only is Hedorah a harbinger of the apocalypse, but also a harbinger of great savings. Don't know what they were expecting. The guy they bought the mask from looked pretty shady. So, while the country is faced with an ever-increasing supply of sludge, stench, and William Castle Skelorama props, everyone is looking for a solution, ranging from Yukio's typical let's go to a theme park brand of idiocy,
We'll get every youngster in the country, and then we'll throw a real blast of a party.
to somewhat more scientific solutions.
Hedorah lives in a world in which no earthly creature can exist. That is to say, it lives in sludge and polluted air. So it's possible that oxygen might deter its growth.
To randomize screaming at the cameras. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think that Sludge Baby may have a point. If I was in this kind of situation, I'd probably cry, scream, and poop my pants too. Also, I don't know about the rest of you, but doesn't this screen layout seem a little familiar?
Here's the story of a lovely lady.
So, while the rest of the nation is busy going foaming at the mouth crazy, Professor Yano has stumbled across a solution, using the miracle of electricity to turn plastic tadpoles into plastic dog turds. And while Yukio and the rest of the hippie cult should be celebrating, they're too busy being bummed that only a few people showed up for the end of the world party, despite their having purchased enough purple Kool-Aid for thousands. So depressed are they that their sadness has actually managed to bleach the world black and white, at least until Yukio tries to cheer them up in his own special way.
So why complain about it? There's no place else to go, and pretty soon we'll all be dead. So forget it. Enjoy yourself. Let's sing and dance while we can.
Damn it, I know I was excited to see them all die, but when they feel the same way, it just takes all the fun out of it. Despite the fact that they've just heard what might be the worst inspirational speech ever committed to film, the rest of the gang is clearly into it, and immediately start having the time of their lives. Well, except for the terrifying hobo ghosts, at least. And nope, they are never explained. Also holding out from the celebration is Ken, who's just too damn busy having another acid flashback. I'm sorry, but that frozen shit kid, I didn't expect you to walk in on me expression. Seriously, that's the expression Godzilla would wear if you walked in on him in the bathroom. And speaking of things that someone squeezed out of their ass, Hedorah shows up, as well as his nemesis Godzilla, looking to have one final brawl. After a brief early round ass-kicking, Godzilla is briefly put out of commission. And you know, in spite of whatever other flaws this movie might have, at least it doesn't have endless footage of planes and tanks wasting half the country's GNP in a fruitless attempt to bring the creature down. Hell, who knows? Maybe the people of Japan have finally learned that trying to take one of these things down with anything other than another giant monster is just a pointless waste of lives.
To torches!
Yeah, right! Good idea! Come on! Come on! Yeah! Take that! Come on!
Or maybe not. And of course, after watching them screw around for a few minutes, Hedorah finally gets sick of their shit and dissolves the lot of them, much to Yukio's presumed delight, not to mention my own. Less pleasing is the fact that he misses Ken, and before he can correct that mistake, Godzilla shows up once again, and this time the fight is on in earnest. Holy shit, I was just joking about him being trained by Pai Mei earlier. Naturally less than pleased with this turn of events, Hedorah knocks Godzilla on his ass before once again unleashing his ultimate attack. Oh come on, I've seen porn where people have spent less time with someone's crotch in their face. I can't be the only one who thinks this is weird. What do you think, terrifying hobo ghosts? That was exactly what I was thinking. So after Hedorah literally begins dropping a deuce on Godzilla, he finds himself distracted by the military, who, rather than politely asking Hedorah to slowly feed itself through the professor's desktop turd zapper, patent pending, have decided to supersize the electrodes. Still, they have to find a way to pry him away from his makeout session as he and Godzilla come rolling down the hill like Danny and Sandy at the beginning of Grease. Yeah, given what a perv this thing is, I think that all you'd have to do to get its attention would be to flash it. Not what I meant. And you know, for once, I am very, very, very happy about that. Naturally, the power goes out at the worst possible moment, but luckily Godzilla's on hand, and thankfully he's taken a shower because he's able to turn his foe into a crispy critter in short order. Still, given what happens next, I think it's safe to say that Godzilla is still pissed about the indignities he's suffered, and that he's got a plan to ensure that none need ever suffer a face full of monster nuts ever again. That's right, kids! Don't forget to spay and neuter your monsters. And you can tell from the expression on what's left of Professor Yano's face that after all he's been through, he's entirely on board with this. Of course, before they can attach the cone of shame, Hedorah takes off, and it's here that things get really silly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present you with what is quite possibly the most glorious moment in Godzilla history. Behold. My God, it's beautiful. What do you think, hobo ghosts? Yeesh, tough crowd. So after the most thrilling dogfight in cinematic history, and one more attempted crotch attack that fails for obvious reasons, Godzilla hauls his ass back and performs a bit of exploratory surgery on him before baking what's left into dust. His mission accomplished, he offers everyone a brief glare before heading on his way. Which actually creates another problem, given that he'll probably destroy another city or two on his way out. If only there was some way to drive him back into the sea. Some force that would make him desperate to leave Japan forever, never to return.
Godzilla!
Yep, that'll do it. So as Godzilla heads back into the water, pursued by Ken, we get a quick hint that there may be one more Hedorah before we fade to black. Anyway, that's Godzilla vs. the Smog monster, and although it's got its weird spots, I actually like it. Still, I seem to be in something of a minority there. When the film was finished and released, producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, who had been hospitalized during the production and was unable to see it till it was finished, told director Banno that he had ruined Godzilla, claiming that the films had descended into kiddie fare under his direction. This, despite the fact that it actually sold a few 100,000 more tickets than the previous movie. And that also means that Tanaka somehow thought that this was more kid-friendly than this.
Godzilla says that I should learn to fight my own battles, you know.
Maybe, but did he tell you that your face looks like a pile of shit that somebody tried to beat with an ugly stick until it resembled the Gary Busey cookie from Ginger Dead Man? There are several complaints I've heard leveled against this film, and the biggest one by far is people's trouble with the film's more psychedelic sequences. While some of them I can just chalk up as a product of the 1970s, others, such as the animation and stills of other galaxies, seem to put people off. And honestly, there's actually a pretty good explanation for that. First of all, take a look at the budget cuts and time restrictions they were working under. Basically, Banno had been handed $20 and some shoestring and been told to go out and make something as special effects intensive as a Godzilla movie in 30 days. On top of that, there were complications on set, such as the actor who played Hedorah suffering an attack of appendicitis so severe that he had to be given an emergency appendectomy while still wearing the goddamn Hedorah suit. In other words, this actually happened in real life. Personally, I like to think that they told the doctor to put on the Godzilla suit and have at it while they filmed to save on SFX costs. Add to that the fact that Banno A introduced an entirely new monster, and B refused to use stock footage despite the series having increasingly relied on both shortcuts, and it seems to me that those animated bits were an absolute necessity to ensure that the film was completed at all. Honestly, while the character relations and motivations are murky at best, what really sells a Godzilla movie are the creatures. Not only is he a surprisingly credible threat to the entire human race, and not only does he have an awesome variety of forms, his battle with Godzilla is one of the best of the Showa era. It genuinely feels like an uphill battle for the big guy, and there are plenty of surprises to be had in the tactics both opponents used. To be honest, Hedorah is one of the most criminally underused creatures in Toho's stable, and I wish it had more than just a quick nod in Final Wars. To be honest, I think that Banno deserves a fucking medal for being able to deliver a film as complete as this one. Sadly, not everyone agrees, and after being told that he was effectively the Grinch who stole Godzilla, Banno was effectively banned from the franchise and his up-and-coming directorial career ground to a halt, relegating him to assistant director status for the foreseeable future. Fortunately, he kept at it, and actually had a big hand in producing the most recent Godzilla film from Legendary Pictures. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of that one, it is nice to see that he has a place in the Godzilla legacy beyond producing a single quirky film. Anyway, that's all we have time for this week. I'll see you next time on Terror Obscura. everyone, I'm Leslie Rice, host of Terra Obscura, and while today's episode may not have been a You Asked For It episode, I would like to take a moment to dedicate it and give a special shout out to a big fan and somebody who's helped out a lot with the show in the past. His name is Christopher Wagoner, and he is a super fan. Back at the start of the year when I was beginning my Kickstarter campaign, he was one of the many generous people who donated, and he actually donated enough to earn, I believe it was 4 episodes that he could have named. When the time came, I went around, I was collecting up what everybody wanted for the episodes that they had essentially paid for. And when I got to him, he said to me that he didn't want to name any specific episode, that all he wanted was for me to produce more content more rapidly. And anyway, I have managed to produce more than twice as many episodes this year than I did last year, and on top of that, I've got the great news that I am now a part of Channel Awesome, thatguywiththeglasses.com. And you can expect a lot more out of me. In fact, I'm hoping that I'll be able to bring some new stuff your way. If you've been watching my Blip channel, then you know that I've been trying some new things out. State of Fear. I have 1 or 2 other ideas for the future. I'm keeping them under wraps for right now. I don't want to, go and say, hey, I want to do this, and then it never materializes. But I have a lot of high hopes, and I hope you've been enjoying the show, and I hope you'll continue to enjoy the show. Thank you all very much.